Dainis, Jakovels. Welcome. You're going to talk about application of hyperspectral airborne remote sensing for marine ecosystem monitoring.
Okay, good morning. Well, it's not anymore morning. And my talk will be about airborne data. And it's more like what we can offer for spatial planning, what kind of data. And traditionally, probably the most trustful and traditional data are from field measurements. Of course, we can get data from satellites and so on, but our specialization field where we are working is somewhere between the ground and the space, in the sky. And in our institute, we have access to airborne laboratory, which is equipped with plenty of sensors, starting from high-resolution RGB sensors, LiDARs, and different spectral sensors from UV range to infrared, and also including thermal spectral range. But in this particular study, or today, I will present some data, what we used for maritime studies, and we used just only small part of the sensors, which is invisible range, and let's say we acquired data in all rainbow colors and what we can get from it and how we can contribute to spatial planning purposes. And here is one study where we looked how our data can be useful for assessment of chlorophyll distribution in Gulf of Riga. And traditionally it's used by field measurements, just you can see different spots where traditionally done, and monitoring is monitored during time. In this study we just tested how we can contribute for this with information from the sky. Here you can see these lines with different maps representing this chlorophyll distribution that later can be attributed to phytoplankton distribution and used for their planning. When we were working on this study, of course, we were looking at traditional ways how to do it, but then we understood starting to ask questions. And one of the questions was, for example, if you look closer, this is how sea looks from the sky, blue line. Then this is data what we can get from our spectral system. There should be some, yeah, it's not working, but it doesn't matter. We can interpret our data and represent it in different color pictures, representing chlorophyll or phytoplankton distribution. And field measurements are usually done in some points. For example, if you do field measurements somewhere over here and monitor it, and you present this data, it's from this region. But for example, if you go, for example, 100 meters somewhere different place, the result will be totally different. Then we started to think, okay, what does field measurements, which is traditional way how to measure or acquire data, what does it represent, and so on. Moving forward, then we just checked some lines which are crossing. And for example, here is one line which was crossed like in frames of 1 hour, like 20-minute delay. Of course, you can see this map. It's quite correlates, but still you can see that a little bit change has been like appears a little change. But when we look at line which has approximately hour delay, we can see that the stern, what we can see, this distribution map, it's totally different. And in this particular case, if you want to measure all these points within this Gulf, it takes several days for field measurement. For us to fly, it took several hours. Then yes, the question was, what is the most trustful data to use, like field measurements or some data from space or airborne data and so on. And what we came up that it should be used in Fusion, that proper planning of campaign should be done and we can use our airborne data for showing a distribution of some parameters, for example, phytoplankton, and then of course do some modeling and compare it with satellite, and also calibrate it from the field. And also, just to show what we can get from our flying laboratory, we supply data to Estonian colleagues, our neighbors, for their study in Saaremaa, and they did these measurements for some regional planning in Saaremaa, and they were interested in underwater habitats, and this is the result what they got. And one more interesting case from application of our airborne system was, I think, last week when we tried how to use it not only, for example, for plant operations, but for example, if something happens in the sea, some split of some substance and so on, and this was in frames of HELCOM International Response exercise, Baltics Delta, which was held close to the Latvia, Ventspils. And these are images from our plane. And then further we can use also some spectral sensors to process it and get this substance. In this particular case it was popcorn, because it was like exercise. But this was interesting case for us, how to react, how to react quickly, adapt our system, and for example, if there's something happens in the sea, we can be ready to go and look and find what happens, measure it, and so on. It's also interesting application for our system, not only monitoring, for example, some standard parameters and so on, but to be ready for some accidents. And also, one interesting example, probably not very common from literature, what you do with airborne imaging, but in this particular case, we try to use it for monitoring of seabirds. You can see here seabirds as small light dots. This image is from thermal range. These seabirds, of course, they appear lighter because they're warmer, but still these darker spots, they are colder. You can see, of course, tracks of seabirds. And for example, here, seabirds are located in some like colder spot within where, to our understanding, water mixes somehow. And this is place where they usually gather for some party of eating and so on. And it's also quite new, interesting data. Probably could be used for some spatial planning in frame of some monitoring of some sea animals and or seabirds. And it's also done from our spatial from our airborne system. It could be done from the sky. Just to conclude everything, if you look at the airborne remote sensing and compare it with field measurements and also satellite measurements, then the main advantages are adaptability, flexibility, that we can, of course, adapt it with different instruments, and also be flexible. We can fly on request, which is limited in frames of satellite, and also the advantage is resolution. We can acquire high spatial and spectral resolution, which can further be used for data analysis. And for example, if you are interested in some classification or getting information about species, then the next thing where you will look after field measurements would be airborne spectral information. Of course, what we learned from this chlorophyll campaign, that careful planning is very critical for good data, accurate data, and not always that, for example, field measurements that are done, they will represent everything what happens in this region. We should look at it quite very critically and look at different sources of data. In this particular case, field data, airborne data, and also satellite data, they can be fused and used together to get more complete understanding about the interest of area and the data, what we can further use for our planning. And yes, thanks for your attention. As you saw, we are working in different divisions and we are open for different challenges and participate in different missions and so on, and test our system for maybe some tasks and so on. That's if you get interested and you have, then yes, after this presentation we can discuss, probably do some cooperation further and so on. Thanks.
Any question? Then we go to the last one. By, let me see, Alessandro Pititto, who's going to talk about EMODnet Human Activities Portal. Yes. Right?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'll try to make this short and sweet because I notice we have only a few minutes before coffee break, 2 to be exact. Any of you is already familiar with what EMODnet is? Okay, very few of you, so it's worth explaining. Okay, EMODnet is a project financed by the EU Commission with the aim to make available geographic data on the sea and on the seabed, starting from the principle that the EU Commission, they don't want to make new data collection because what's already available is enough. It's just a problem, as I think we all said this morning, it's a problem of coordination, of lack of harmonization. There is a lot of data out there, but sometimes we don't even know it is there. So EMODnet is the EU Commission style solution to remedy to this situation and to make available all data in a single place. It's not actually a single place, and we see why. So we're a network of organization. EMODnet means the European Marine Observation and Data Network. There are at present, I think, 100 plus organizations that are working on EMODnet. We work in the EU Integrated Maritime Policy. And we strive to make information freely available and interoperable. At present, there are 7 with us, but we renew 6 geoportals in operation that provide data, and these are the following themes. Okay, we have bathymetry, we have geology, we have seabed habitats, biology, chemistry, physics, and then there's us, the new one, human activities. I say we're the new ones because EMODnet started, now it's 4 years ago. There were 6 portals. Then we are now in the second phase of EMODnet, started in 2013, and we're the new lot, human activities. We got started in January, so I mean we're in a very early development phase, but we're working very fast to catch up with the other portals. So I'm going to talk only about human activities. If you want to see information on other portals, I suggest you visit the central portal, which is www.emodnet.eu, and through that portal you can get to the different thematic portals. What is human activities about? As the title may suggest, we aim to map human activities related to the sea. Any possible human activities. According to our contract, we are requested to provide geographic data on the following themes. We have aggregate extraction. This is already available on our map. Gravel extracted per year. Commercial recreational shipping. This is very interesting. We are working on a raster, and every raster cell will provide an average number of vessels per year, possibly with vessels broken down by type of vessels. We're working with closely with EMSA to get the AIS data. It's going to be a bit difficult, but we hope we can find a solution for bureaucracy reasons, as you can imagine. Then we're mapping cultural heritage, dredging points, fishery zones, hydrocarbon extraction. These also already available on our website. We're very proud of this data set because it's almost complete. The North Sea and the Baltic Sea are basically complete. We're mapping all oil, offshore oil and gas exploration wells, and for each well you can have information on its status, if it's active, if it's abandoned, on the purpose for drilling, if it was exploration or exploitation, on the type of fluid, if it was oil, gas, the year of drilling, the company, the country it belongs to, and so on. Then you have major ports. We're providing data on traffic in major ports, on goods traffic, passenger traffic, and vessel traffic. The source of data is Eurostat, and this data set too is already available on our website. Mariculture, this is also very tricky because we are mapping mariculture areas and providing data on the species of fish and shellfish farmed and production tonnage by year. Now this type of data is very difficult to retrieve because aquaculture producers are generally very reluctant to share all this information. And we're working with some sources. There are projects from the 7th Framework Program that are mapping shellfish farming across Europe. And we're also working with JRC to see if it's possible, with their data, if it's possible to map mariculture points via satellite images. So it's very interesting. I'm not working personally on this, but it's very challenging. Then we are offering data on ocean energy facilities, pipelines and cables. This is also tricky as well because in some countries data are confidential for security reasons. In Italy, my country, for instance, the ministry they don't want to. They have the data, but they legally not allowed to share it for security reasons. They fear that terrorists might decide to place a bomb or something, although it's very unlikely. But Italy is not the only country, actually. Then we're mapping protected areas. We have the European Environmental Agency data on protected areas, and it's already available on our website. We're mapping also waste disposal. Waste disposal, we mean everything we can find, basically. So we have dredge dump sites, but we also go into ammunition, waste disposal, and so on. Wind farms, this is already available via the Atlas of the Sea and the European Wind Energy Association. And then we have other forms of area management. It's a residual data set. We're putting everything we can find of military areas, so anything. But to make it short and sweet, some example, otherwise you're never going to understand what I'm talking about. This is the, looks familiar, the Gulf of Riga. Okay, I activated some of the layer we already have. You can see here, these are marine, these are protected areas via the European Environmental Agency. What we showed are just areas that are entirely at sea, or areas that are internal areas but are tangent or intersect the coastline. So in this case, we consider that this area might have an interest in the coastal sense. So we are avoiding to show the whole data set, which includes entirely internal area, and would make the map very heavy to load and almost impossible. Okay, then I activated also, these are dredging sites. I activated also, okay, sorry, the protected areas. So these ones, as you can see over here, are nationally designated areas. We also have Natura 2000. Then I have dredging points. Then I have main ports over here. And of course you have a map. Okay, we're still developing it. There are only basic features at the moment. But anyway, what happens, you can of course retrieve information for each element, polygon or point you see over here. For instance, if you click on the port of Riga, you can have access to information. This is Eurostat. You have, okay, this is goods traffic. You have the port ID, the year. You can browse through previous years. This dataset is, I think, up to 2001, and you can have lots of data, okay, on the type of goods, dry bulk, liquid bulk, or other cargo, ro-ro, and then you have total units of measure. You have a link to the source here, but this is only temporary because we're also building the data catalog, which is probably the most important part of the website, where you will see something a bit different here. You will be redirected to our data catalog. Well, you'll have full metadata, inspired compliant metadata, and you will also have the possibility to download the data behind this map in all available formats. I mean, we tend to privilege open source, but sometimes we're also working with the Esri geodatabase. But anyway, we're trying to provide everything. And we will also offer links to for WFS and WMS, which means that if you have your geo portals, you can feed our data directly into your portal via a web link. Okay. Another example, this is always Latvia. This is a hydrocarbon well. It was drilled in 1988, so I think, yes, it was still the Soviet Union. It was an exploration well. It's abandoned now. Okay, but this is just to give you an example of the information you can have. Of course, if we moved to the North Sea region, we could see also active wells. But okay, but that's the same. It's just, it changes the color, but it's the same. The principles of e-MSP. e-MSP is not a new data collection. We take the most from what's already available. So if you have your data, our aim is to make them available. We don't want to duplicate efforts. Data should stay where they are. We're not building a centralized database. This is very important. Our final aim, final goal is that we acquire our data via WFS too. This is not always possible, of course, but we tend to do so. So this means that sources will remain responsible for their data. Okay? We're providing harmonized and interoperable data. This is the biggest challenge because data are there, but we're working a lot to harmonize them. You can imagine our effort on hydrocarbon extraction. We have a different source for every country, so we have to put a lot of effort into it to have an homogeneous data that is suitable for maritime spatial planning inter alia. Data should be free and free of any restrictions. You should do everything you want with our data. And we're privileging public sources because, of course, I mean, that's the spirit of the project. We have a budget for purchasing data, but only in exceptional circumstances. The benefits, some of the benefits: enable effective and efficient maritime spatial planning, reduce uncertainty in our knowledge, improve offshore operators' efficiency and cost in gathering and processing marine data for operational planning purposes, stimulate competition and innovation in established and emerging maritime sectors. Maybe this is a bit too ambitious. And it has been estimated that an integrated marine data policy will save at least €1 billion per year. I thought it was this was a bit far-fetched, but tarjeta roja. Okay, that's it. If you have any other questions, I'll be outside. And okay.
Thank you. No, we should stop here because otherwise the organizers are going to show this to me. So, well, yesterday Angela Schulze said that the best conversations, the best discussions are over coffee. So let's grab a coffee and discuss and ask everything. Thank you very much for coming.